that's a little, it's a little complicated to write the circ rules that way. I think, is that also going to require item types to be specific to that library? I think maybe, possibly, kind of, almost, sort of. I think what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to write a rule that says it's going to take a lot of circulation rules, because the way I think you're going to have to do it is you're going to have to create a borrower category that's specific for that library, and then you're going to have to create a rule at every other library that says that they're not allowed to borrow at those other libraries. That's the way it's going to have to work, and that's going to be a lot of work depending on how many libraries you have.
Yeah, we have temp cards at all 59, or no,
Yeah.
most of our libraries, so that is going to be a lot of work.
Yeah, it just means you're going to have to create a separate, it's going to have to be this Leavenworth temp or Leavenworth only, and then you're going to have to create a circulation rule at each member library that says no Leavenworth only, essentially, at this library.
Okay, that's not much different than how we do it now. There obviously will be more rules, but we already have those individual patron categories, so that's fine. Okay.
Yeah, and I think Ocean States was, giggling and stuff because they've been trying to do the same thing. The one thing that I know that we had looked at is it's still trapping holds in an undesirable way. So the rest of it works, but when you go to check an item in and the patron that isn't supposed to get that hold, it's still popping up. So that's the one thing that has a little loophole that I think would require some development to close that loophole, because unless there's some way, I haven't been able to figure out how to get that to work.
Yeah, because the problem is at the bottom part of the circ rules for a particular library, where you specify an item type and whether it's all libraries can borrow or if it's local home branch only. You can't specify a patron type with that. And that, if you could do that, then we'd be golden.
I see. Okay. So the member library staff members who are pulling materials will have to be aware of that in a way that they haven't had to be.
Not so much pulling. It would be more when you're checking in materials, it might pop up with a patron that shouldn't have that hold triggered for them. You can hit ignore, but you would need to know that that is somebody that you want to ignore. And I don't know, Mike, did you ever look at jQuery to try to put a message in? Because I think that's where we left our discussion.
Right. I don't think we talked to Lucas about that yet.
Okay. So there's a possibility that maybe with some jQuery, you could recognize that patron category shouldn't be having a hold trapped and either prevent it, or at the very least create a message that says, like, don't fill that hold.
Okay.
Alex, can I have you explain the scenario one more time, just for the benefit of the recording, and definitely not because I wasn't distracted and missed part of the question?
We have some libraries in the system that have a small population of what we call local cardholders, and those local cardholders are entitled to borrow and place holds on material from their home library, but they are not entitled to the direct access that a standard library card holder would enjoy.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Honestly, I think the easiest solution is to talk those libraries into saying if you pay for a card like that, that they get all the privileges everybody else does. That's the easiest solution.
It is the easiest solution. It would be great, but we kind of had a media firestorm about this where they stood their ground, these libraries. So I think they're dug in.
That's unfortunate. I hate it when people
dig in. It is unfortunate. Yeah, I agree.
I thought of a question, which is, are these two things possible? One, can you have, say, a library of things item type where only the patrons who are a member of that library can place holds on those things? And then second, can you have it so that if a hold cannot be placed on one of these things, that would need to be transited to another library? So in other words, it not only has to stay at the library where it resides, but also only the patrons of that library can place holds on it.
That's actually pretty easy.
Okay, great. Because we can't do that. We can't do that in our current system, which really sucks.
Yeah, no, you'll like that. That one's a pretty common feature. Yeah, and basically when you're creating item types, you can call it whatever you want with the description, and then it's all about what rules you're appending to that particular item type. And then that can also be split out by patron category as well. So you have a lot of ability to control that. And if it's as straightforward as just keeping it at that library, that's easy. Where it can get tricky is if you have, like, we have situations where some libraries lend DVDs, but we want that reciprocity. If you don't lend DVDs, you don't get to borrow other DVDs. So that gets a little bit more complicated, but is still doable.
Great, thanks.
All right, so we've got a couple of questions from some new libraries coming in. What is the challenge of the day that various consortia are facing?
Challenge I'm facing right now is one of our counties is asking for data in a new and interesting way that I've never had data asked for before. They want it broken down by which school district the patron lives in, just for one county. And unfortunately, they want the last 3 years worth of data, but I can only give them, they want circulation data and borrower counts. Which requires mapping these patrons to find out which specific area they live in, which I can do with Policy Map, but then getting that data in Koha and maintaining that data is just going to be a pain in the ass.
You could use like an additional attribute or something to...
Yeah, that's what I'm starting to work on, but it's one library in one county, and it's not a situation that affects... it could potentially affect one other county in our area. We have the Kansas City, Kansas. Kansas City, Kansas fills up almost the entirety of Wyandotte County. And the library, the main library in Kansas City, Kansas, is a division of the school district. And so the people that at the county level want to know who's in what school district, because that affects the way that money is allocated. And then we have one library. There's the one corner of the county that isn't part of Kansas City, Kansas, is the city of Bonner Springs, and they serve some patrons that live in one school district, some patrons that live in another, and some patrons that live in a third, and so they want this broken down not only by school district, but also by city. And it's just really confusing. And it's because they want to find, the county is trying to find ways to stop, to give less funding to the one library in the county that they don't have control over. So
does the county have a GIS department?
They might.
Because we have in the past for this sort of stuff, we just dumped our database and gave it to our GIS department, and they know how to slice and dice it by all those types of things.
I'm kind of reluctant to give all of our data to.
Well, I mean, the address. It doesn't have to have names or anything, but just the addresses.
I think I've come up with a way to do it, and maybe you'll hear about it next month. I don't know if anybody else out there is using Policy Map. It's a tool that we bought, that our system bought, and it's a really useful tool that allows you to get all kinds of cool information out of the maps about the demographics of the area that you're covering in the data. So it's a pretty interesting tool. So it's a lot of fun to play with. That's one of the reasons I'm keeping it to myself too, is it's kind of fun to mess around with.
A current thing that we are struggling with is number of items on bib records being a lot and slowing down the whole system. Our biggest pain point currently is our People Weekly record, that we cut the number of items by over half, splitting it into two, and we still have 1,700 items on it. And when a patron has a People Weekly issue checked out to them, eventually they can check something else out, but if a library staff goes to check out something to their card, their account just spins and spins and spins because the People Weekly is on their record. So we are trying to figure out, do we want to break it out even more? It doesn't seem to work super well with Aspen if we do that, but we have to play around with that a little more. So that is our current issue, or mine at least. Renee might have different things.
No, I'd say that's our big one also, because that affects every aspect of the system. So
yeah, we thought it was affecting at first just the time that it took to attach an item to that record, because the whole entire bib record with every item has to load first before you can add a new item. And then if you include an item template, when you apply the item template, the whole page reloads again. And so we thought that it was just the cataloging portion of it, but then we discovered the Circ aspect. So now it really is across everyone. It doesn't slow down Aspen. Like, patrons can still place holds in Aspen. That seems to be fine speed-wise. It's just anything that is even touching the People Weekly record in Koha is really comes to a halt, essentially.
And what's happening?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
No, you retrieve a patron record, scan their card, and there would be a message that says loading, like it's loading their checkouts. And it says, you can continue, you can keep scanning while it's loading. So we do. The only problem is, and if anything, like anything that doesn't have a material specified message is okay, it'll check out. But then if it does have a material specified message, like check for 5 CDs, that's going to stop that item from being checked out because you have to acknowledge that message. But that hasn't loaded yet. So you can then keep scanning things, and then finally that message, catches up. And anything you've checked out after that will not be checked out to the patron. So that has been a pain point, because now we can't find these items. Where are they? Well, the patron has them, or they come back and they weren't checked out.
Sounds like I'm glad that our catalogers at most of my libraries were taught some really bad practices with magazines, and so it doesn't affect us. Most magazines are entered as a single bib with a single item on them. So yeah, I see the big eyes. Yeah, it's not a great situation either, but it completely circumvents this problem. Many of our libraries are so small, they get magazines like that, they don't even catalog them. So
well, as we speak, I am facing a Consortia issue. Got a little distracted there. We just had we're trying to change bibliographic item types, and instead we had our item types changed in the items. So that was that's all the stuff that we were talking about earlier, where we have holds that stuff that we don't want to send out to other libraries. Anything that was marked with some of those is now available. So I've been scrambling a little bit. So that's one of those things where even with specificity in the ticket, you gotta, I don't know, double or triple check that stuff. Any other? I know holds came up as an issue. Does anybody want to? We talked a little bit about some holds issues. Does anybody else have concerns that they wanted to address?
I don't have a concern, but I do. I'm kind of curious. Has anybody else used the group item holds or the item groups in Koha? I've got a library that's really interested in being able to do that, but it looks like there's a lot of back work that has to be done to convert records, and I wanted to know if anybody actually has done that at all.
We use them extensively. All our periodicals. We were using Sierra before we migrated to Koha, and they had volume records, which were essentially the same thing. So all of our periodical records had been attached. That was kind of one of our big 2020 work from home projects, was doing volume records for all our periodicals. And then now we use it for travel guides, basically anything that has like items that are attached to a serial record. So we have travel guides, test books, they all are attached to an item group for the year or the issue for all of those. There is a lot of work setting them up, but I'm not sure what you meant by harming the record.
Well, not harming the record. I just was wanting to know if anybody's used it or not, and if there was a lot of how long it took to convert everything. I mean, I have a cataloger that's very reluctant because it sounds like a lot of work going in, but I have libraries that really would like to see it, especially for like their graphic novels and stuff.
Yeah, it definitely is a lot of work because you have to create each item group one by one. Maybe Bywater, are you hosted with
Yes.
Bywater? So maybe Bywater can do something where, like when we had our migration, anything that had a volume field from our old system was automatically turned into an item group and the items were linked to it. We are now doing a lot of cleanup on that because our volume information was not super clean. So we're cleaning up a lot of that. But if your data, if there is something in your records now that is indicating what volume they are, there might be some sort of work that Bywater could do to help kind of convert those into item groups. Okay. One thing is that if there are libraries attached to the bib record that don't want to use item groups, you kind of want either all to be doing item groups or none to be doing item groups. So it's really difficult to do both because the way holds work, the patrons can place a hold on a specific item group, but it's only going to allow them the options of those items that are in that item group. So if there are a bunch of items that aren't in any item group, they're never going to come up on hold unless a patron specifically somehow knows to go look for it, or if a library staff actually does it. Okay. So it's good to have all or nothing. Keeping up with it, creating new item groups as we go hasn't been that big of a deal. It really was just the work getting them all set up, but Bywater might be able to help with that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have one thing I've been meaning to talk with Jason about, so we can just do that now. I think I had mentioned a little bit earlier that we aren't using the cost transportation matrix, and we don't want to do anything super complicated. We just might want to take some of our libraries that don't have the same courier access and just downgrade them a bit. So we would only be having basically 2 levels of that would, in theory, even with a ton of branches, not be too difficult, correct?
Populating the table is the most painful part. So if you can put that in a spreadsheet, like it's just run a query on the table that's behind it and put that in a spreadsheet and have Bower fill that in. That's gonna save you the full headache. But other than that, I think it should be easy to pull off.
Okay.
If you go in and mess with the transportation cost matrix itself, I'm pretty sure I have some jQuery on the jQuery wiki on Koha that will move whatever row you're working on to the top of the page, so that way you don't have to try and work through the middle of the table. You can just move that row that you need to edit up to the top, and then that way it's a lot easier to see what you're doing. And I'm 99% sure that's on the jQuery wiki, on the Koha wiki and the jQuery library.
If not, I know where to find you.
Yeah, that's not a problem either. I'm pretty sure it's on there, and I've got the wiki open in a separate screen, and I'm looking for it now to make sure that I'm not lying to you.
That brings up something. Is there any jQuery anybody's been playing with that's interesting?
So we actually had Lucas help us write a jQuery to keep the forgive fines checkbox checked and make it checked by default. So we have most of our libraries that they're fine free. Still a little holdouts. There's still a few holdouts there, but so the ones that are fine free, they don't want to collect fines at all. So they would have to constantly go in every time they go to the check-in screen, go in, expand the settings, check the box for give fines. So we're like, it's more of a pain for the fine-free libraries to go in and check the box. So we're like, okay, we're going to make the fining libraries go and uncheck the box. So Lucas actually wrote a little jQuery to check the box, have it checked automatically, but it's like sticky. So like the fining libraries would go in, uncheck the box, check in items, switch screens, and then when it goes back, they don't have to like uncheck it again. So we thought that was pretty cool.
I know one thing that we find super useful that we isn't a new thing for us, but it started with I think maybe George wrote the original one, and then it became a little hard to handle with updates, and that is to kind of deselect the stuff you don't want to see in the circ rules because it goes so long. And so Lucas had adapted some code that we had, and now it's like color coded and there's buttons and you can toggle stuff on and off. That's really nice, but it's just super helpful to not see like certain things that we just rarely use or never use, and just make it so you can actually look at the circ rules you care about all on one screen. That saves so much time, that little adjustment.
Yeah, I've seen Lucas's enhancements to that work that I did. And I don't think it's on the wiki. I think just mine is. But that would be something to maybe encourage Lucas to actually put that out there where people can find it.
And I'd be happy to share if anybody's interested in it. It's pretty easy to edit to what you want to hide and not hide. You just name it by whatever the name of the particular field is in that table. You just name that, and then it can hide it.
I just put my modifications to the circulation rules, and I found the transportation cost matrix thing. I put a link to that in the chat box, and my version of the circulation rules modification is in there too. And I'm a version behind on that. I don't know if it needs to be updated for the newest for 2211 or not. But that is one of the things about that, if you attended or watched anything from the conference, anytime you build anything with jQuery, you've got to worry about it changing from version to version. And Andrew mentioned that in his presentation.
Yeah, and sometimes it'll even break with like a point release too. So
yeah, any little thing that changes a selector will change the jQuery, and that's the biggest problem with the circulation rules. Is as big as that, as wide as that table is, you know, what is it? It's over 3 screens wide. When you have 3 screens together, it fills up 2 of them, and it bleeds over a little bit onto the third if you're not paying attention. But the thing that changes the most in there is new columns get added almost every version, it seems like. So then you got to go back and redo everything. And I know I guess there's a way that Lucas has figured out to work around that, but I'm not 100% sure what it is.
And that's why it's nice to switch to that, is because it's just focusing on the names of those columns. Yeah. So when there's a new one and you want to hide it, you just add that name, versus I think yours was counting like the spot in order.
It's indexing the rows, yeah.
And when the order changed because new things came in, it completely fouled up everything. So this is way easier to respond to.
I was trying to find something cool that I did with jQuery, because all my jQuery is cool. So I found one associated with the transfer cost matrix. If you're considering that or have it in place, I'm going to share my screen. You can add colors to the numbers, which really helps visualize what's going on in this giant table. And I've matched that with my Excel document that calculates the values, so that I can easily like compare the two and see if I can find errors and things like that. So colors. I don't think I put that on the wiki yet, but I can.
Yeah, I think I have values. One of the things I hate about that table is you've got to go in and unlock each cell, and I've got a piece of jQuery that unlocks all of the cells with one button. It takes 2 minutes to go through and cycle through all that, but not having to unclick each cell is an advantage. This is the link to some jQuery I wrote. That I mentioned it before at the web dev meeting. I fixed it, but I can show what that looks like if I can pull up my screen here. Number 2. So if you're creating a new patron, or if you're editing an old patron, we have people here that no matter how hard I try to explain to them what the difference between email and digests only is, they will still not select digests. So I've got some jQuery that just forces it. If you select email or text message, it forces the digests only on the item due and the advanced due notice, because I still have people that will say, this patron is getting they've got 40 items checked out and they're getting 40 separate emails saying they have an item due today. How do I fix that? I just want them to get one email. And I say, well, when I trained you and when we talked about this at the last 3 meetings, I explained that you click digests and then we'll just send one email instead of 40 separate emails. And I'm tired of having that conversation. So now it's just forced on everybody, which is kind of, I'm hoping that will solve some problems for me.
I've been fiddling with something in that same area, different problem. So I can share that too. I shared this to the WebDevSig channel in the screen, in the Slack. So my problem was we've got this whole notification patron attribute, which usually lives up here. People were missing it and didn't understand that they needed to check it so that that would show up on the slips, because that's how it was set up, so that when you print the hold slip, it says you need to email this person, you need to call this person, or they already get an email, they already get a text, or you need to contact them. So what I did was set this up so that when you check the boxes, it automatically fills that attribute with what you've checked. And then I also made it so that if you use the dropdown, it checks the boxes. So I think that covers all my use cases. The only sort of weird thing with it is, like, I think there are situations where they're getting the text, but they also want a phone call. So I had to set it up where you check the box and then set need to contact, so that the slip will say they need to contact, but they're still getting those background messages too. So I haven't tested this with my live environment yet, so I'm sure there's going to be complaints, but I think that'll resolve some issues that we've been having with people missing it and not understanding. I have a feeling I'm going to have to a bunch of batch modifications, though, for people that didn't realize that they could fill that in and the checkbox is already checked.
That's good. I like tying clicking the button to filling in that field. Is that the built-in koha field, or are you still using a extended attribute?
It's still an extended attribute. I'm like, that's why I haven't pushed it out yet. I'm like, should I really change to the main contact method and like try and transition over, or just keep doing what I'm doing with the attribute? So I'm torn at this point.
I forget, is the new main contact method, is that an authorized value? Can you add to that main contact method, or is it just stuck to
I don't,
specific fields?
I don't know. Good question.
We asked to be able to have a do not contact in there, and we can't, so it must be something
hard-coded.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sticking with my attribute then. I can
Yeah.
I can do what I want. It'd
be nice if it was it would be nice if that main contact method was an authorized value. I wonder if there's a bug for that. I'm going to look.
There is. So that's why I know that there is, but I don't know what number it is.
I'll go look and see if I can put a link in the box.
Yeah, that'd be great, because we do have a lot of people that want the option of don't contact them at all for hold pickups, because they come in every single day. So that's what we're really pushing for, but I'm seeing a lot of pushback on those comments on the bug that people don't want that. So if you agree with us, that would be great if you could put that in there of people don't want to be contacted for everything. So we had that option, it'd be great.
There's a link to the bug in the chat box there. And it's, if it's an authorized value, if people don't want to use it, they don't have to create that value. So I don't see why people would push back on that.
Yeah, one of the things we regularly discuss at any SIG meeting or any of the general meeting is what bugs people want to look at and talk about. So that's probably a good transition to start looking at bugs and things that you think are interesting. One of the things that was pretty clear in the Koha conferences that typically bugs without some sort of sponsorship don't just magically get done. So there is ways that Bywater has. They have a devs page that allows kind of crowdsourcing for some of those potential developments / bugs to get done. And koha-US has a new process for selecting developments that we're funding, or at least partially funding. So there are a few options there, but yeah. Anybody have anything that's caught their attention, or if they've filed? I am a little curious for those that are not on using Koha yet, if this talk about bugs and how all the community works and all that is absolutely baffling, or if it kind of is making some sense.
It makes sense. It certainly was one of the big takeaways from the koha-US conference. So I think it's great. It certainly beats the avenue I have now to suggest changes to proprietary software. So I'm excited about the possibilities.
Miranda, you unmuted. Were you going to say something?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add a bug. I don't know if anybody else is interested in this, but the way that our cataloging works is our libraries create brief records, and then OSL cataloging staff overlays them with a full record. And we would like our libraries to be able to have access to use Z3950 and search out into other servers using Z3950, but not have to also give them the permission to be able to edit fully cataloged records. Right now, those permissions are connected. So I filed a bug to separate that out so that we can say, yes, you can use Z3950, but no, you cannot edit a record that was created using the default framework. Because we have our Z3950 records. Whenever they use that to bring something in, it is automatically a fast add record. So they can edit those all they want. But then once we overlay it and switch it to the default framework, we want them to not be able to touch it.
You know the number for that bug?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat. 34896.
Anytime I'm in a meeting and somebody mentions a bug, I add it to a list. I add Bugzilla at koha-US.org to the CCs for that.
Oh, great.
And if you go to koha-us.org/bugs, there's that's an RSS feed of all the bugs that address is subscribed to. What I was going to say is that Nick put a bug in the chat box, so maybe he should say why he wants us to look at that one.
So I just threw that in there because Kyle and I are listening to everything and like saying, well, we should do that, we should do this. So when somebody said about the jQuery that did the checking the box for forgiving fines, I was like, oh, we should have a way to do that at the library so you can just define a fines amnesty. Because we've done in the past, we've used jQuery where a system could put that in place, and then for a week, essentially that box is always checked and they can do the like fines free week where they get all their books back. And I was like, what if you just put it in the library administration? That'd be great. That's what we do when you say jQuery, Jason. We hear how can we do that as real development and get it permanent so that it doesn't break with your upgrades. That's what we like. But again, nobody has sponsored it, so like it's only when Kyle or I either get a box of cookies mysteriously or find some time that we didn't know existed.
We could probably form a committee to send the developers cookies freshly baked cookies.
I know how to do that. I don't know how to write code, but I can definitely bake a mean cookie. So
I hate to admit how effective that would probably be. Like the amount of goodwill you would generate. It's ridiculous. Don't do that though.
I'm
Don't
just
cookies. I'm just joking. Please don't.
I'm just thinking for all these years we've been paying for developments and we could have just gotten a box of Fig Newtons.
I do love Fig Newtons.
Do Nate and Brendan know about this backdoor to development?
Yeah, let me clarify that I was mostly joking. But we do, I mean, when we can do these tiny things, we like to do that. We try to help out where we can.
I'm like, I don't remember who mentioned that. Was it, it was somebody from Ocean State, wasn't it? It was Mike, right? You mentioned the jQuery about turning the forgive fines button on all the time. One of the things I'm at the point now where I've only got 2 libraries left that are doing fines. But one of the ways that I've worked on getting the other libraries to go fine free is to try to shame the libraries that still have fines. So I have a report, and whenever I have a meeting and somebody brings up the notion of fines, I always say, well, you know, there really aren't that many libraries left doing fines. Let's run the report and see which ones they are. And then in front of everybody, I say, well, it's just these 2 libraries left that are charging fines. So that really shouldn't be that big, you know, and so I try to make sure that the libraries that still charge fines, everybody knows which ones they are, and that there's a lot of pressure on them to drop that. So
All right. Another potential topic here, something that we're toying with doing is using the pages functionality on Koha to do various things. Has anybody played with that much?
I reverse engineered, well, harvested Lucas's code that he showed for printing notices. I'm still trying to make it work for my situation. And I somehow broke it, so I can't actually show you. But it basically does the same thing as it.
Yeah, we're trying to think if there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, it is pretty much endless for information you can include. I know I had a suggestion for libraries being able to put their Circ policies on the Circ page. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I have a dashboard on the Circ homepage that runs a really big nasty report that fills in numbers and things, and I wanted like push that off to a page so that it's not rerunning that massive nasty report every time they go to the Circ homepage. So I think lots of opportunity for like dashboards, cleanup, that sort of thing.
We have one page for reports where we put the title and then link directly to it, and then just have it all on one page with just the links directly to them, just to make it a little easier to see. We also have those same report links on the main site or the main page, and then on the circulation page, and then on the reports page as well. So there are at least three different places that they can get to a report. And we still have problems with people not being able to find reports, but that's another issue. I do want to put in staff resources into a page, but I'm like stuck on the image. I can't get an image in there, so I'm just frustrated with it because it keeps looking for a source. And so I've loaded it into like the images, and I've tried to get the link that way to put it in there, but it's just not working. So until I can get an image in there, I'm not going to share the staff resources page with anyone.
Has anybody successfully gotten an image?
I know I've fought with it on the, not within pages, but with the editor in the slips area, which is the same editor. Like I was trying to do the same thing with the QR code, and then I found that if I just copied and pasted it into the box, it worked. I don't
Okay, try that, because yeah, I've been trying to do it via the insert an image.
Yeah, that didn't work for me when I was messing with QR codes on slips, but I did get it to work somehow. I'll have to go back and rack my brain on that.
That sounds like maybe an example of a fairly new feature that's still a little buggy.
But once we do get the image in there, we have a lot of staff forms on Cognito forms, so they're just links, and it's easier to collect the information from staff via form to get exactly what we need. So once we get that image up there, then we'll be able to link to all the forms that they need. So if they want us to add an ISBN to an existing bib record, they just fill out the form, or they want us to add a cover image to an existing bib record, just fill out this form. So we'll have multiple forms for us to edit the system or the catalog for them.
Yeah, that's interesting. That does that help having it pre-organized like that? Because we have a ticketing system, but everything goes in and then we figure out which bucket to put it in.
For cataloging, especially, it's super helpful. We have like forms for oral history projects or original cataloging that will take them. We try to catalog things by hand. So, but if they can't, they can fill out that form, or internet reports to like the Internet Archive, like PDFs to there. So yeah, it's helpful for those type of requests.
Yeah, interesting. It might be something worth experimenting with.
On the other hand, I copied and pasted onto my test page, and it did put that image in there. So worth a try.
Okay, so I'll just paste it in. Don't use the image thing. All right.
Sorry,
yeah, I think no, that's fine. I think our challenge is we also want to make it as easy as possible for somebody just to put in the request, make as few barriers as possible. So I have to think about whether or not it, some of that divvying up some of those things would be too burdensome. Or
yeah, what we do is we have the ticket so it creates the form and then it forwards it to our ticketing system. And yeah, so it'll have the information and then assign it properly that way. But yeah, I can definitely help you out if you ever need to set it up.
Okay. Yeah, we have different things we can do with our ticketing system where we can create just different links and stuff that would pre-package it too. So there's some options there, but thank you. Okay, well, we are nearing the end here. Does anybody else have any last issue or bug or something or question, something they want to get in there before we close up shop for the month? Go ahead.
There was a video that came out Monday from Jesse and Kelly about the library groups, and it says it was available in 2305, but are all the settings there in 2211? Because I'm seeing everything, and so it's just not going to work until 2305. So I can I was wondering if I could just set everything up, because our libraries are able to edit everyone else's items, and I want to get them in the library groups as soon as possible so they are only editing their own items. So that Monday minutes was very exciting to watch on Monday. So I'm looking forward to doing setting that up.
Michelle, I'll check your settings to look.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, that was something we sponsored. Because when they're allowed to edit other libraries' items, disaster unfolds.
They delete other people's items. Yeah.
I've been fighting with that for years, and I've used a custom jQuery that now I don't have to bother maintaining anymore to do that. So I'm looking forward to that a lot.
All right. I do want to mention that we are moving to a monthly meeting. We were doing this every other month, but the demand has been there. So back in the days when Jason and I would just, catch up and no one else would show up, we were like, maybe we should do this less. But now there's a lot more people coming to these meetings. So the next one would be normally scheduled for Thanksgiving Day. We're obviously not going to do that. So it will be November 15th is what we have that scheduled as. So I'll send out a reminder. It's also on the koha-US calendar for that date. And I think my final thing is I was delighted to have the Bywater folks join us today and be able to help here and there and hear what the consortia issues are. I hope to see them again in future meetings.
I do want to say that bug that Michelle mentioned and Click sponsored has been in here since 2018. And that's when we were training, Bob, I think, when you moved from old Koha to new Koha. So that's exciting to see that it made it all the way in.
Yeah, it took a while to work its way through the community. We've had it patched in for some time, but it would occasionally break. And so I'm super excited that that will not be an issue with the next release.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your discussion. I love hearing what everybody's up to and what issues you're facing so we can kind of collectively work through it. I'll hopefully see you in a few weeks on the 15th. Have a great day.
I have a quick question, Bob, once the recording stops. So